ba ba ba
Oh,
ba.
wow, he just went for the instrumental.
I switched it up today. I did the
Like, wow.
instrumental. That, of course, is Sense of Doubt. Uh, track 2, side 2, technically second instrumental, first ambient piece of side 2 of the record we're talking about today, Heroes. My God, Robert.
It's a long time coming.
You know what I was going to say? You just flipped me off.
No, oh, yeah,
You
that's
just
what
gave
I
me the
was,
middle finger.
yeah. No, I wasn't. I was adjusting my glasses. It's been a long time, guys. I'm cracking one open for this
Oh, it hasn't
podcast.
been a long time. It's been a
Oh,
while.
come on. I knew it. So this
My
is...
goodness, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, my
God.
friend. It's good to see you as always. And
Likewise.
I've got my Irish coffee cream here. I got my Ithaca Beer Company, Spirit of the Finger Lakes. Really good beer company in upstate New York.
We haven't even gotten into our drink segment yet, and you're already cracking open the beer.
Dude, it's 9:30 at night, and I'm 32 years old with a 5-month-old. You know, this is
Well, there you
like
go.
like it feels like I've been up all night.
So can you share with the viewers what beer you're drinking?
Oh yeah, I think I said it before. It was Irish coffee creams. It was on sale.
Okay. Yeah, and it definitely looks like it's that looks like it's a stout for sure.
Cheers to all you Sound
From
of Music viewers, listeners, and to you as well, Andy, my cohort.
There you go. I'm rocking water tonight. Some good old H2O.
I like my dark beer.
Ugh.
Stuff.
You know, I don't know. I used to be a dark beer guy, and I don't know. Now it just doesn't settle well every time. I'll stick with my IPAs, but you know what? This isn't a beer channel. What are we doing here?
But I do have one question for you before we get started.
Oh, please.
Very important question. Godzilla or Kong?
Godzilla or Kong?
Who's gonna
win? Wow.
The fact that you have to think about it, you lose. It's Godzilla, dude. Come on. He's got atomic breath. He's a giant lizard. He's Godzilla.
I don't know. I think I gotta go with my boy King Kong.
All right. Well, anyway. That's the end of this podcast. I'll see you later.
This isn't a King Kong or Godzilla podcast, and this certainly isn't a beer podcast. This is, however, a music podcast.
Music podcast.
My God, has it been a long time, my friend. It's funny, in preparation of this episode and with the record, by the way, we've been talking about David Bowie. I know, again, it's been a while, but we've been talking about this David Bowie fella. And, you know, we've talked about 11 of his studio records. Technically 10, because we skipped Pinups, because that was skippable. But in preparation of the record we're going to talk about today, I went back and listened to the prior episode, which we recorded, which was like 6 months ago, if not more. That, of course, was low. And, yeah, it's... like, it really dawned on me, like, it's been a while.
It has.
Now, we did do something in between. We did
the guitarist thing. I think that's the only thing we've done post the birth of my daughter. So she was born in September. In 2 days she's gonna be 5 months old. So in 5 months we've done one podcast. So apologies to all you people who actually watch. So.
But you know what? We are back, and you know life's been crazy for the both of us as always. This pandemic, you know, still continues for everyone, of course, and that's just not limited to us. But we are here, and you know, we're hoping to be a little more consistent. We're not gonna give you time frames or anything. We're not gonna tell you we're on a bi-weekly schedule or a monthly schedule. We're just gonna be on we're gonna do the best we can schedule.
Yep, gonna do the best we can. And I don't know if you want to briefly talk about this, and then we can move on to the actual album, but. You talked about potential, and I don't want to spoil anything, but you talked about potentially maybe finally doing some content on your own soon.
Yes, I'm not ready to plug it yet.
Okay.
But I will say that yes, I am looking to start doing solo content. I think I've alluded to that in the past, but it's something that I've been kind of planning on my own behind the scenes. When Rob and I started the Sound of Music channel, the intent was always was for this series to be our main series. along with doing other content, which we've done as well, but also with the intent that both of us could do our own thing. And Rob, you've posted 1 or 2 videos of your own.
Yeah.
I, of course, haven't. But that's how we've always envisioned the channel. And we're going on almost 2 years this summer since we've been doing the Sound of Music channel and podcast. So yeah, stay tuned for that, guys. Again, I don't want to hype it up too much because just with our inconsistent recording schedule with our lives, but I am in the works of doing something that I'm hoping to make on a regular basis, being more active with that, and all I can say, stay tuned for that.
Sweet. Look forward to that, people. I'm gonna try to. I also have a couple ideas for things that I want to do eventually, but it's a big eventually because I have another channel. I have a whole lot going on as well. So I actually am just starting school as well. So to add to stretch myself even thinner here, but there's a couple projects that I've been dying to work on. One of which I mentioned was my top 25 prog rock albums, which I still want to do, and a couple other things of that nature. But for me, it's really going to be a while. But if you're looking for like something consistent, keep an eye out for our boy Andy over here.
Yes, you're pointing the wrong way, at least on the way.
Don't worry, it'll make sense to the viewers.
The right way.
It'll make sense to the viewers, so don't worry.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all that matters, as long as it makes sense to them. Yeah. So stay tuned for that again, guys. And like Rob alluded to, this will be something when I do launch. It will be a consistent thing, at least for the foreseeable future. So I'm excited, and
Cheers.
End of time. Stay tuned.
Cheers.
Good old H2O.
So what we talk about today?
We're talking about a little record. You may have heard of it by a little English fella named Davy Jones.
David Jones.
The guy from the Monkees. David Bowie. Yeah. David Bowie. Davy Jones. David Jones. We know of him as David Bowie. We are going to talk about his 12th studio record, Heroes. Some might know of it as part 2 of the Berlin trilogy. Interesting enough, the only record in the Berlin trilogy that was fully recorded in Berlin, which we'll talk about more a little bit in depth. But you ready to kick it?
Let's kick it.
Let's kick it, man. All right, here we go. So, Heroes, studio record number 12, album number 12. By English musician David Bowie, released on the 14th of October, 1977 on RCA Records. After releasing Low earlier that year, Bowie toured as the keyboardist for his friend and singer Iggy Pop. You may have heard of him before, Rob.
Maybe.
At the conclusion of that tour, they recorded Iggy Pop's second solo record, Lust for Life, at Hansa Studio in West Berlin, before Bowie regrouped with collaborator, you may have heard of this fella too, Brian Eno.
Whoa.
And producer Tony Visconti to record Heroes. Again, the second installment of the Berlin trilogy, following Low and preceding 1979's Lodger, which of course will be the next record that we talk about. Lodger will be the next record that we talked about. Like I mentioned before, Heroes is the only one recorded in Berlin. Much of the same personnel from Low returned for the session. However, we have one addition. You might know of him as old Frippo Pants.
Yeah, I was excited for you to mention.
From our sister program, the King Crimson Discography, Mr. Robert Fripp. So I want to give a little bit of background before you go on to personnel with Heroes. And we maybe should have touched base on this on the Low episode, but that's all right. So we know this is often referred to as the Berlin trilogy with Low, Heroes, and Lodger. Okay. I've talked about Iggy's first 2 solo records a lot, The Idiot and Lust for Life, and they're kind of in this period as well, along with Brian Eno's Before and After Science. So to give a little bit of background with this era, we all know the Thin White Duke era, Bowie, Young American, Station to Station. He was coked out of his mind. Well, We get off the Station to Station tour. We get to France, end of 1976 with Iggy, where the two decided we're just going to clean up our act. That summer, they record Iggy Pop's debut solo record, The Idiot. After meeting Brian Eno after recording The Idiot that same year, that's when Bowie, Tony Visconti, and Brian Eno started working on Low. So this would have been the fall of 76.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Low was done before January of 77. But when Bowie went to go submit it to RCA Records, they were like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? There's no single. There's like, what is this? So RCA stalled putting the record out for another 3 months. So intentionally, both RCA, when Low finally did come out in the spring of 77, both RCA and Bowie did nothing to promote the record. And on Bowie's end, that's not because he wasn't proud. Up to that point, he considered Low his greatest achievement, and he's often said to the very end, of his life, that he considers the Berlin records pretty much his artistic peak. He felt it was his least commercial record. So did RCA. So he was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go on tour with Iggy instead. So now we're in the spring, almost summer of 77. Iggy and Bowie are touring for The Idiot. We get to late summer. They go back into the studio to record Iggy Pop's second solo record, Lust for Life. Fast forward to September. Bowie, Eno, and Visconti get back together again. And that brings us to the record we're going to talk about today.
Nice. Heroes. I like the backdrop there. That's good.
Why did I give this backdrop? Because interesting enough, I was reading Brian Eno, instead of the Berlin trilogy, actually considers Lust for Life, Low. I'm sorry. The Idiot, Low, Lust for Life, and Heroes. He considers that as like the Berlin era, as opposed to the Berlin trilogy with the 3 Bowie records. So I thought that was an interesting little snippet and, a little bit of background for you. But anyways, so this time Bowie's like, we're gonna promote this record, and we'll talk about the Isolar 2 tour when we get to the 2 live records at the end of the show. But I thought you would appreciate this, Rob. For marketing purposes, the slogan for the Heroes record was, there's old wave, there's new wave, and there's David Bowie's Heroes.
I like
there
that.
You have it.
And
then one other thing is the famous album cover with Bowie doing, I don't know what he's doing, that hand thing he's doing. Well, that's from an artist named Eric Heckel. And if you're familiar with Iggy's the Idiot album cover, he's doing a similar gesture to the one that Bowie's doing off that album cover. So you're going to see a lot of correlations with Iggy and Bowie in this era in both of their careers. But I've blabbed on enough. Give us some personal so we can deep dive this album.
That was a good I was gonna say that was good background. I was gonna ask you about the cover because it's a very iconic cover. One of his most iconic, actually.
Absolutely, if not his most, along with the Aladdin Sade album cover.
I wanted to add, I'm going to butcher the quote, but I saw an interview a while back with Robert Fripp, which we'll talk about in a second. And he said that he got a call from Bowie, and Bowie asked him about, working together and, recording. And he said something very Fripp, it was like, I'm going to totally butcher the quote, so I apologize if anybody knows what it is. It was something like, well, he was like, if you're willing to take the leap, then I will too, or something. He said something very weird like that, and then Fripp was like, and I was on a plane the next day. Like, he said it was something like that. Very Fripp. So it was very Fripp, it was very just like
nice.
One little sentence exchange, and he's always said a lot of really nice things about Bowie. But that being said, the personnel, we have, of course, Mr. David Bowie himself, vocals, keyboards, guitar, saxophone, koto, tambourine, backing vocals, and he produced the record. Brian Eno, formerly of Roxy Music, and of course he's done tons of solo stuff since, and I think before. Synthesizers, keyboards, guitar treatments. Mr. Frippo Pants, Robert Fripp himself, formerly of King Crimson, did lead guitar. Carlos, is it Alomar?
Alomar.
Yep. Did rhythm guitar. George Murray on bass. Dennis Davis on drums and percussion. Tony Visconti did some percussion, and he also did some backing vocals, and of course also produced the record. Antonio, I think it's Moss, did backing vocals. Colin Thurston was the engineer of the record, and I'm gonna butcher this. It's a Japanese name. Masayoshi Tsukita did the photograph. So that must be the person that you're talking about. Also did the Iggy Pop record.
Yes, and when you were reading off the personnel, this dawned on me when I was preparing my notes for this record. This lineup, excluding Eno and Fripp, so the Alomar Murray Davis lineup, I think as far as studio musicians, is his longest lineup, because this lineup goes back to Young Americans, and they're on every record up until I believe Scary Monsters.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
So I mean, these guys lasted even longer than the Spiders from Mars.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting little snippet as well. But let's do it, man. Let's deep dive track by track.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Here we go. Side 1, track 1. This man knows how to open a record. We've said that as far back as Space Oddity.
Oh yeah.
And this song is no exception. Beauty and the Beast. This song's interesting to me because, by the way, I meant to mention to you at the top of the episode, I've been mentioning or referring to, let me get the name really quick, the Complete David Bowie. It is a book that I cannot recommend enough, written by Nicholas Pegg. This is mainly where my research stems from, is from this book. It is so well written and documented that for a while I was just reading it as we went with this series, but now I'm at a point where I'm actually reading ahead. That's how good it is. So I can't recommend this book enough. Again, it's called The Complete David Bowie. So there's my plug for the day.
Remind me of that when we're done. I'm gonna add it to my Amazon wish list, because
definitely, yeah. I'll send it to you. So that's where the majority of my research comes from. So just wanted to put that out there. So when I was reading the Heroes chapter and kind of going back and listening to this song, it's almost like this song is kind of looking back on the Thin White Duke. With lines such as "There's a slaughter in the air, protest in the wind, someone else inside me." He's looking back at that time in his life where he was just the lowest he was, right? But it could also almost be interpreted as an expression of gratitude from his escape from LA, where he was coked out of his mind, to where he is at currently, which of course is West Berlin. So again, typical Bowie. This is almost like an always crashing in the same car, type of song where, it's definitely open and, up for interpretation, if you will. But what I really love about this song is there's just like this disjointed combination of piano, guitar, electronics, all correlates with his voice, which builds to this awesome crescendo at the very end of the song. I dig this song. This is again a great opener. I also love the backing vocals throughout. I think my favorite line is probably my favorite line in any song off this record. I wanted to believe me. I wanted to be good. I wanted no distractions, like every good boy should. I don't know why that line resonates with me. And again, going back to those two interpretations of the song, I think that can align with either or. So that's my thoughts on Beauty and the Beast. What do you think?
I like your interpretation of the lyrics there. As always, I appreciate that context, because it's always the thing. Like I feel like you're the lyrics guy and I'm the music guy sometimes.
Yeah.
Before I get into my thoughts, while I have it in my brain because you jarred something, was it this record that he recorded part of it in Berlin and part of it I don't know if he went back to the UK or whatever, but there was a certain point in the Berlin trilogy, I think, where he was recording in Germany and then he recorded, Or am I thinking of a different record?
You're thinking of Low.
Oh, I'm thinking of Low. Okay, never
Low
mind
was
then.
the one that was kind of scattered all over the
Okay,
place.
so then he went. I assume he went back to Germany then, and then he recorded this. Or okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, wanted to get the history straight there.
Yeah.
My thoughts on this song. It's funny. This was my I think this is the first time this ever happened. But as far as the first song goes, this is my grower track.
Wow, already.
Yeah,
already
because when I first listened to it, I was like, I actually was slightly disappointed because I was like, this sounds good, but it didn't grab me like those opening songs always do. And then by like third or fourth listen, I was like, this song, this is the one that keeps getting in my head. This is the one that keeps like, it keeps getting stuck in my head. So like, I would say for me it was definitely the grower. It's got a really great hook. And instrumentally, it's a really nice peek at the rest of the album because this is when you hear it. I thought to myself like, well, okay, this is more of kind of the Low direction, but we're also taking it sort of on its own direction as well. So a lot of cool instrumentals in it. As you probably being such a fan, I mean, you even said it in your when we did the greatest guitarist list, Mr. Frippo Pants was your number one. He was in my top 10 as well, and he's just got that really recognizable sound, and that was again one of the first things that I noticed on the song was his playing, which I enjoyed too. And I don't know, it's kind of got like a nice little bouncy rhythm. Like I said, it's got a really great hook. His vocals are very good. The lyrics, again, I'm the music guy, I didn't dive into as much as you did, but now, like, just kind of replaying the song in my head, I liked your analysis of it. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially considering the history up until this point that he had with his struggles and his personal demons and things. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, the whole Beauty and the Beast could be, even just the title itself could just be, the beauty could be possibly where he is at this point, and the beast was what he had to overcome. I don't know if that's again, that could be my interpretation of it.
It's interesting. Making that correlation with the lyrics and the music, because I think while this record has a lot of the dark undertones that Low has as well, and he certainly throughout the lyrics talks about his his struggles. I do think, and maybe because it's the middle record, he's been in pretty much Europe for at this point for a year, right? I do feel a sense both with the instrumentals and the lyrics, a little bit more of a light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe I'll talk about that more at the closing track on this record, as opposed to Low. Like, Low is a dark record, lyrically, sonically. This one, I don't know. It doesn't have. It's cold, but it doesn't have that. It's not as dark as Low, as I guess is where I'm getting at. Having said that, though, with the instrumentation, and that's apparent right from this track, is there's a lot more layering as well too. Like this record, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because this might go with my final thoughts a little bit, but in many ways, this is the better record. Like this, the format of Heroes is the same as Low more or less, but you listen to this and you listen to Low, and it's clear that like this one, we've done this before, but how can we
improve
make it sound better? And take it to that next step, and that's right off the bat, that's apparent with this opening track, I think.
Yeah, and it definitely has. It's definitely a bit not more polished, but like you said, he's done it. He's done this. I don't even want to say this style, because this record has a different vibe. It has a different, I would even argue, sound than Low for sure. I would definitely agree that it's certainly not as dark as Low, but I know what you mean. It's like this in terms of like his more experimental side. He's already he's stretched those creative muscles already, so now he's trying to build upon what he started, you know.
There you go. Yes, building upon what he did prior.
But yeah, I'll go more into that as we get into the record.
So I think it sounds like we both agree overall that this is a great song. You said already.
I will say that it didn't grab me in the first couple listens, but I found as I went back, this one kept standing out to me more and more. So I was like, that's great. I'm glad that, again, we have another solid opening track, you know? So
yeah. Awesome. Well, I think, and this is a good segue to track 2. I think a lot of records, and prior Bowie records have been like this for sure, where it's almost like you have back-to-back bangers, and then track 3 is either that subtle piece or maybe that epic piece. In the case of, the track 3 off this one,
fair enough.
But track 2, Joe the Lion, for sure, is also a banger, like Beauty and the Beast. An interesting little snippet about Joe the Lion is this song is actually a tribute to the performance artist Chris Burden, who I don't know who he is.
I don't know who that is
but he was he was famous for having himself crucified to a Volkswagen in 1974, which the line "nail me to my car and I'll tell you who you are." Okay, well that makes sense. That lines up. And having another thing this guy did was having an assistant shoot him in the arm at an art gallery in 1971. So that kind of lines up with the line, "Guess I'll buy a gun, you'll buy it secondhand." So again, directly from this performance artist, 2 different instances. So I thought that was interesting.
I like that Bowie's done a lot of sort of tributes to other artists. I mean, this has been a theme on almost every album that we've covered.
On every album, whether it's, what was, pop culture of the time, or, a little more underground, like stuff like this. Hunky Dory comes to mind as far as that goes, with that side 2 with the Bob Dylan, the Lou Reed tribute, the Andy Warhol tribute. So it's something that's interesting, not only about this song, but really all 3 of these records of this era, is that Bowie would come up with the lyrics on the spot. So Tony Visconti was talking about this in the book, that he said David would put headphones on, stand at the mic, listen to a verse, jot some words down that came to mind, and then would record. And I guess he picked up this format with working with Iggy Pop on The Idiot. The best way I can describe just this song, to me, again, shout out to Frippo Pants, is this song sounds like, to me, Robert Fripp having a bash at the blues.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I was going to say about it. This is the heaviest track, and it's got that.
By far.
Yeah, what I would definitely say is that this is, this has Fripp all over it more than any other track. I mean, it's got that kind of King Crimson darkness and heaviness to it. And when it first came on, I was like, did my Spotify screw up? Am I listening to a different album kind of thing? Because it's real heavy. I really like it. It's got that.
This is a King Crimson song featuring David Bowie on
vocals.
Kind
of. It was. I really, really like this track. Like you said, it's a second. Definitely the second banger on the in a row for me. I think I like this one actually more than the opener, perhaps a little bit, because this one did grab me a little bit more. But this was a like I said, what I wrote down here was that I thought it was very heavy and kind of droney as well, because it still has that sound of the album. But yeah, awesome tune. Liked it a lot.
I think this would be a good moment to mention, since a lot of Fripp love is being given at the moment.
We're biased there.
Is when I know. When Fripp did fly in to record this record, he recorded all of his guitar parts in 6 hours.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not.
All of it.
The guy's a consummate professional. I'm not surprised at all. And I think he did some amazing work on this record. I think some of it's his finest work,
I think this period in his career, and I don't think maybe we talked about this enough in the King Crimson series, but
yeah,
I mean, this was the period in, in between, 74 Crimson and, 81 Crimson, where he was just a studio musician.
yeah.
I mean, some of his work on these Bowie records, the collaborations he did with Eno.
He did stuff with Eno.
I mean, he's on.
Even before this, I don't know for sure, but I assume the connection to Fripp was through Eno. Correct. I assume that. So
yeah. No Pussyfooting was recorded right around the time Crimson broke up.
Yeah.
It was released in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. Fripp and Eno did No Pussyfooting in 75, and then I think An Evening Star might have also came out in 75. But regardless, yes, that's how Bowie was introduced to Fripp, was through the connection of Eno, of course. But again, his session work, Blondie, the Talking Heads, we can go on.
Mm-hmm.
So some of his work outside of Crimson, I think is some of his best work.
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear that in the context of what's one of my favorite David Bowie records. So.
Yeah, this was definitely kind of the Fripp track, I would say. He
For
really
sure.
shines on it. I loved it. Like, I will admit, we did a whole King Crimson podcast. Top 10 bands. I think I put him in my top 10 bands for sure. Love me some Fripp. So
yeah, I think that one we'll have to redo maybe like next year or something, because I think they're in my top 10 now.
Yeah,
and I excluded them when we did that video. But
yeah.
Anyways, this isn't a King Crimson podcast.
Could be though.
It could be.
Should we move
you ready to talk about?
Should we move to the big Kahuna here?
The big one?
Yeah, I don't even think we need to spend much time on this one, to be honest with you. Ironically.
I don't think we do. I feel like it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Track 3, go ahead,
I'm
please. Take us there.
Track 3, the title track. Probably the song that everyone knows by this man. Hands down his most popular song. And that, of course, is Heroes. Named after. I shouldn't say named after. The title is in reference of the Noise song, right? Hero.
Off of Noise 75. Great underrated record. Go listen to Noise 75 right now. Go do it.
Yes. Very influential on this record.
Yeah.
For sure. I know those of you aren't familiar with Neu. I think we've name dropped them quite a few times. Mm-hmm. Neu are a German krautrock band.
We're going to talk about krautrock in a little bit. We'll get into that. Don't worry.
Yes, for sure. Stay tuned for that. We've talked about that. But they, during this time period, Neu had a huge influence on both Bowie and Eno. Interesting enough, the quotation marks for the title of the song were a deliberate affection. And that was designed to impart an ironic quality on the otherwise romantic aspects of this song. Mm-hmm. And yes, by the way, this is a freaking love song, people. It is not an anthem. Let me get that out of the way now.
Also, to anybody who likes the song, I mean, most of you know this song. I have a kitty right here.
Kitty cat.
Most of you, I would assume, if you're watching a Bowie podcast, would know this song. Do yourself a favor and watch the video of Tony Visconti breaking this song down. And you really, when he's in the studio and he'll like turn tracks off and on and stuff, when I saw that, I was amazed, and I would actually really love to see something with this whole record, and I'd like to see it with Low too. Just how layered this record is, like how many different parts are on these songs, particularly this song. It was really amazing to watch it. So just look up Tony Visconti breaks down Heroes and you'll find it.
That's a great video. I know exactly which video you're talking about. I came across another too long ago. That was a longer one where he breaks down Heroes. It was Heroes, Lodger, and Scary Monsters.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I have to watch that.
So that I'll have to send that to you. That's worth watching too. Visconti in the Complete David Bowie book refers to Bowie's vocal performance as Bowie histronics, which is basically his own peculiar style of yelling and screaming, which he does in this song and does in a few other subsequent songs too. on other records. I love Fripp's soaring guitar on this track. I think it complements that pulsing bass. It feels very Velvet Underground to me almost, which, you know, makes sense. Bowie was highly influenced by the Velvets. You know, I had my rant where, you know, I just said that this was a love song. This song was actually inspired where Bowie was looking out a window in the studio and saw Tony Visconti kissing a girl who was actually, you had mentioned her in the personnel before, who does some of the backing vocals. I already am drawing a blank on her name. And they were kissing in front of the Berlin Wall. This was a secret for many, many years because Tony Visconti was still married at that point.
Oh, I see.
Mary Visconti, I think was her name, because she did backing vocals on Low. So we had mentioned her on the last episode. So this was something Tony revealed years later, and Bowie confirmed this.
The whole line where it's like, so that's where part of these, so nothing could fall.
So that's nothing could fall. So that's where part of the inspiration came from. But also, I mentioned that Eric Heckel artist before, who was the inspiration for the album cover. Another painting that him and Iggy saw, it was called, and I'm not going to get this pronunciation right, the Requarrel? The Requarrel Lovers Between Garden Walls. So that's also where the inspiration for the lyrics of this song came. Here's the thing with this song. I don't want to say I have a love-hate relationship with this song. I have a complicated relationship with this song. Because on one hand, this song does fall into that category of songs that I'm sick and tired of hearing of. But not in the same vein of like your Kashmirs or your Another Brick in the Wall. You and I had talked about a while ago, Dark Side of the Moon is no secret, your favorite album.
Yeah.
You had talked about how you treat yourself to that record, right?
Yes, I did today, actually. Ironically.
Oh, well, there you go.
I hadn't listened to it in months, but I actually... sorry to trail off there, but it's funny you mention it. I actually did listen to it tonight. It was great. So
tonight you treated yourself to some Dark Side, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about this song. Yeah. I need to treat myself to it. On the last episode, the Low episode, I talked about how my preferred listening experience is to just sit down, drink a cup of coffee or tea, and just headphones, music. That's it, right? Not the only way I listen to music, but it's like my preferred way. So in preparation of this episode, I was listening to Heroes. I think this was Sunday, and I had a moment when the title track came on and was just like, this is why people consider this his best song. Not my favorite song, but there is a reason why this is considered his best song. I talked about how I felt or still feel that Sound and Vision, I think, is one of the best recordings. So is this. I mean, just everything from Bowie's vocal performance, again, the peculiar screaming, I think the way Visconti worded it, to the sonic textures of Fripp's guitar, that feedback, to Eno's backing vocals, everything about this track is just incredible. It really is. Is it the best song off this record? I think objectively we can agree, yes, it is. It's hard, again, going back to that, I'm sick and tired of hearing it. It's hard to pinpoint it as a favorite because there is still that part of me that I am tired of hearing it. But when it feels right, when it feels right to listen to this song, it hits you, and it hits you a way that I don't think too many, at least for me, too many other songs do.
I would agree. It's been played a lot on radio. I don't listen to the radio anymore. I was catching snippets of it at work until maybe 4 or 5 months ago when one of my coworkers moved to a different building, and so now there's no radio. So again, I haven't heard radio in many months, and I hadn't heard it in years before then. So to me, I haven't been as exposed to it in recent years as I was in previous years, because this is one of like 3 or 4 Bowie tracks that they play constantly on the radio. Yeah. It still was very enjoyable to listen to. I will say, not because I didn't want to hear the tune. On the last couple listens, I did skip this song, and the reason I did that was because I felt like I just know this song so well, and I just needed to concentrate on the other tracks because I didn't my opinions on the other tracks weren't as formulated, you know. But it had nothing to really do with like, oh, I don't want to hear that song. It was more like, oh, I want to concentrate on the other songs, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I would say that this song, even like without it being played to death on the radio and stuff, that it stands out from the rest of the record too. Particularly
Absolutely.
The rest of, and we'll talk about the instrumental pieces very soon, but particularly the rest of the tracks with lyrics and vocals in it. I really think there's a more melodic quality to it, and I think especially like I said, I know we already mentioned it, but watching that video really made me appreciate that song more and how layered it is, and just all the stuff that's going on. And yet, as Bowie is, he's one of the masters. He makes it a pop tune. He makes something so weird, so like heavy and layered, accessible, and that's probably the thing he does best. And I think you can't get really a better example than this song.
On the last episode you had that I think we even joked that you should coin, and I forget how you worded it, but something along the lines that Bowified. Yeah, there you go. Yes, Bowified. Yeah, it's, you know, this song, bottom line, is it's a great song. It really is. You know, I think like when we talk about top 3 later on, I'll, you know, elaborate a little bit. I think another reason why some of the tracks for me stand out more, because they have things that I look for with the music that I listen to, that Heroes doesn't quite have, but that doesn't take away from the brilliance of this song. Yeah, I mean, you know, bottom line, it's, you know, it's a great song. It's hands down his most iconic song. Still not my favorite, but you'll have to wait to find out what
I would agree that it's not my favorite.
Maybe a year from now.
I would agree that it's not my favorite either. Yeah. I think there's other tracks, quite a few other tracks that are better than Heroes, but I think objectively I see what you mean. It's trying to separate what's and it's hard to do in art because art is subjective. But you can try to look at art objectively, and if you look at the fact that just how successful the song is, how enduring the song is, and, you know, even just putting some of my subjective opinion in there, I would say that Heroes is, I mean, it's definitely one of Bowie's best songs, whether I think so or not. You know, that's just
it. And it meets all the check marks. Like it's a accessible pop song, like you said, but it's not a song. It's not a pop song that just anyone could play. Yeah. Right. Like it has a lot of these, you know, technical idiosyncrasies. It's almost like a good comparison to make is it's almost like his Good Vibrations in that aspect.
Well, we've talked about this idea of subtle complexity and how you can make very complex music and very layered music, but you can do it within the confines of a simple format, like a simple pop song. So you have the hook, format, you know, we can be heroes just for one day, you know. It's got all the melodies, it's got all those things, but it's also a very, very, it's like, its nature is very experimental, and there's a lot going on in the song, especially if you're really listening.
Yes.
There's a whole lot going on, so.
Absolutely. But I think enough about Heroes. Yeah. And
so much that for brings us a little time on it. Go ahead.
I told you. I knew it wasn't going to happen because I had my little rant, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. You were a fool for thinking otherwise.
Fair enough.
So that brings us to track 4, which is my favorite song on side 1, and that's Sons of the Silent Age. According to Eno, this was the only song on the album that was composed prior to recording Heroes, with all the other songs being improvised. And we talked about that on the Low episode already. Take any accident and use it to your advantage. But this was the only quote unquote composition for this record, at least. Bowie himself has indicated that the Sons of the Silent Age at one point could have been the title of the record, or the title that we know it as. The lyrics, I love the lyrics on this song. The lyrics almost, to me, I interpret them as like this third person point of view with the psychotic withdrawal that was more so explored on Low. We've talked about that a couple times, with the line pacing the rooms just like a cell's dimensions. But also this refers to some of the characters as far back as the song The Superman, the closing track off The Man Who Sold the World, with the line, they never say die, they just go to sleep one day. And Bowie does this. Bowie always references other songs, but I thought it was really cool that he went as far back as a deep cut like The Superman.
See, that I didn't know, but that's actually really cool.
Yeah. I love the thing that stands out for me in this song. Two things stand out. One is that almost like doomy like saxophone. This record has some of my favorite saxophone performances from Bowie himself, with this one probably being the peak. And the other thing is, to me, this feels very Beatlesy. This is like one of his more Beatles-esque songs. Like I almost get like a Revolver vibe from this track, like a I don't know, like a she said, I'm only sleeping, even a little bit of Strawberry Fields Forever. Not that that's off Revolver, but like those songs, those Lennon Beatles songs from the mid '60s. That's kind of the vibe I get. With this song, just post-punk, I guess. I don't know. I really dig this song. At first, I did not like this song, fun fact, because my introduction to this song was the Glass Spider version of this song that he did, which would be 10 years from now. The Glass Spider tour, the infamous Glass Spider tour, we'll talk about on the Never Say Die episode. I'm dreading that, but yeah, it's awful. And what I did not realize until I was reading up on it today is on that version of the song, the backing vocals are sung by none other than good old Peter Frampton, because he toured with Bowie on that tour. So just to make matters worse, you've got Frampton, doing the frickin' backup vocals. So used to not be a fan of this song because that was my intro to it, but yeah, don't listen to that version. Listen to the Heroes version. But yeah, this is my favorite song off side 1.
So I don't want to burst your bubble. But this, for me, was one of the weaker tracks. However, okay. I'm going to be transparent with the viewers. Before listening to this record, transparent, like as far as recent, I listened to it once when we were originally going to try to record this, and then I've listened to it 5 times in preparation of this. And before that, I'd listened to it once, maybe twice, years ago. So in a sense, I don't want to say the song is new to me, but it's not. I don't have the time with it that I probably should. But for me, it was. Yeah. To me, it was. This was. It's not a weak track. I'm gonna say for the record, I don't think this album has a weak track. I don't dislike any of the songs on it, but it was a bit of a dip from the first 3 songs for me. Now that being said, I did really like a lot of the electronic textures in the song. I kind of like the vibe of the tune. The kind of spoken, he doesn't really, he sings a bit in it, but like there's a bit of like sort of spoken word thing he does, which is fine, but it's not really like, I guess I like what's going on instrumentally, but I don't necessarily like what he's doing vocally with it. And actually, ironically, the sax was another thing that I wasn't a fan of in this song. I liked it in a couple other songs, but he used it a lot in this record, which I think it worked in some things and it didn't. This one, it didn't quite work for me, but I will admit that I need more time with the record before I can give like a more solid opinion. But this, I will say for sure, this one dipped for me a bit.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I also.
Yeah, I can understand.
Go ahead. Sorry. Finish what you're saying.
I was just gonna say I can understand. Where you're coming from with the spoken word stuff. I think vocally though, I mean, I think some of his best vocal performance is also in this song. I mean, some of those high notes that he hits too, throughout are great.
Some of those,
I can understand where you're coming from. This.
Go ahead.
I think this record too. You had talked about that. You don't necessarily have time on your side for this one, and I experienced that on some of the earlier records that we were talking about. Whereas it was the opposite for you.
Yeah.
So time has been on my side for this record. I've stated numerous times we're in my era of Bowie right now. But this was my grower over the years, and that was partially due again to that awful Glass Spider version.
I could see that happening. I could see me having more of an appreciation for a song like this it's weird how that works with music the more you listen to it. I'm a big fan of the band Gentle Giant, and they're not a band that you listen to 5 times and you can appreciate. They just aren't,
No.
I would argue that the same, aside from maybe the song Heroes, the same could be applied to this album. I think for a person like me, and I'm not trying to say I'm, better than anybody else for the kind of music I listen to or anything like that, but I think for me, who can appreciate more, I mean, I love krautrock, so that's a big appeal for this whole period of Bowie, because that's like the big influence on Bowie in this period. I like eclectic music. I like progressive music, kind of stuff like that. So for me, an album like this is something that I could listen to a handful of times, and I like it even on the first shot. I did when I listened to it, but even me with that kind of background, liking that more kind of eclectic stuff, you can't listen to a record like this 5 times and have a fully formulated opinion. Like I'm sorry, like I used the example of Gentle Giant. One of my favorite albums of all time now is Octopus by them. Hated that record when I first heard it. Couldn't stand that record when I first heard it. Listened to it I've listened to it so many times now, and it's one of my favorite records. So it's like, and there's tons of examples like that. So I mean, for like with this song, I would say, I think upon the first handful of listens that I've had, it does dip at this point. By no means does the record get bad at any point. It just started to dip on this song, I think, for me. So.
Okay.
I wanted to give. I'm sorry for like the very long response there, but I wanted to give context because I think that's really important, especially with.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and don't apologize for that. No, I completely understand where you're coming from.
And you're right. You must have heard this record tons of times now, right? I mean, how long is? When did you first originally listen to this record?
We're talking 8 years, 2013, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked about that numerous times too. When The Next Day came out, I mean, Heavy Rotation was The Next Day, Station to Station, Low, Heroes, and I think like Ziggy Stardust, something like that. So I've had time with this record, and I agree. This is not a record that you even listen to 5 times.
No.
And you have a final opinion on. I mean, I had the luxury in preparation for this episode only listening to it 3 times, twice being tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, I've had almost a decade with this record now in my life. So I would even, when we get to the last episode, would be interested to see where this ranks in your overall rankings, as what songs appear in your, I think we said top 30. So I would be interested to see in what direction that goes. So then, with that being said, I'm actually really interested to hear your opinion on this next track.
Blackout.
Blackout. So this is track 5. This is also the end of side 1. This was actually my other grower. I used to not care for this song for the longest time. But it might now be. I don't know. See, the side 1 of this record, all the pop songs, I love all 5 of these tracks. Any given day, this could be my favorite track off side 1.
Mm-hmm.
But this one really is a core. What I like about this one is it's very schizophrenic sounding. Has a lot of like what would become industrial sounds. So this definitely laid the groundwork for some future Bowie stuff. Even the next record, out of any track on Heroes, this song definitely, and we talked about this too on I think the Station to Station episode, that Bowie always has one song that kind of foreshadows the next album, and I think Blackout definitely foreshadows Lodger.
And you mentioned later Bowie records. I don't know the later Bowie records very well, but I immediately thought of Heathen.
Heathen a little bit. I was thinking more. Well, like I said, the more industrial stuff outside, and I even think of The Next Day and Black Star a little bit too. Nicholas Pegg, who's the author of the complete David Bowie book. Did I butcher that name? Yes, the complete David Bowie. He had talked about how he always kind of thought that this song was about Angie Bowie, with the line, "Someone's back in town, the chips are down." It might have been a reference to Angie, as she would have just arrived, I guess, in Berlin around the time that this song was written. And this is right around also when David and Angie divorced.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how true that is, because this song was also one of those songs where David used the pretty famous cut-up lyric method that we talked about on the last episode. So that's kind of up in the air. But, with David, with, coming up with these on-the-spot lyrics and knowing that, Angie was supposedly, arriving to Berlin, it's very possible that it could be about her. Yeah, this is the song. I think this is definitely most inaccessible song on the record. But this is one where you spend time on. There's a lot to get out of this song. I love, again, the schizophroid sound to this, whether it's Bowie's vocals. And I think Bowie, when you talked about the spoken word approach with the Son of the Silent Age, I'm sorry, you can tell I'm getting tired. That's what bothered me with this song for the longest time. But this song almost kind of I get a Joy Division vibe from this song a little bit.
I could see that. I didn't put. I actually, as soon as you said that, yeah, I could actually see that. I didn't think of it at the time, but absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and we made that comparison a lot on the Low episode with, their band name originally was Warsaw, which came directly from that song, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a really cool way to close side 1, knowing what's to come with side 2. But I really want to hear your thoughts on this song.
Well, you'll be delighted to know I like this song a lot.
Okay.
I also think another thing that you didn't mention that stood out to me was, again, Fripp's playing. I thought he was excellent on this tune. The sort of wailing, sort of shouting bit he does in the middle was like a little bit like I think I can appreciate it, especially with the Joy. Like, I kind of want to listen to it now. Because you mentioned the Joy Division comparison. That part I wasn't like. There's a little bit of that where I'm like, not like a huge fan of it, but I overall really liked the song. I thought it was good. I liked it better than the previous song for sure. I think this could potentially be my sort of second grower, because this one stood out to me last time I listened to the album. So.
And like I said, it's definitely a grower.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought it was better than the track before it, and again, just kind of has that sort of isolated, weird sort of vibe to it. I always like that.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well then, so that closes out side one.
Overall,
so
super
side
solid.
two.
To be honest with you, super solid. Despite, I know I said I wasn't like a big fan of Sons of the Silent Age, but it was like the side one was solid, like very solid.
Absolutely. I mean, from start to finish. I mean, for me, these are all 5-star tracks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because low side one, all the pop songs, we describe them as like fragments. Very much, and I love all of side one of Low as well.
Yeah.
But hands down, these songs are you can't really debate that these are fully fledged out songs. Totally. For sure. So side two, let's get into side two because I think side two of this record's interesting. So we open up with V2 Schneider, which was originally the B side to Heroes, which
and is a reference to Florian Schneider from Kraftwerk.
Yeah, beat me to it. Sorry. Yes, you beat me to it. A reference to Florian Schneider from, of course, who was the co-founder of Kraftwerk. Again, another huge influence on Bowie, as far back Station to Station, as far as the influence goes. I love. Right from the beginning, the opening drums, Dennis Davis's drumming, with again Bowie's sax performance. I digress. I think actually this might be my favorite sax performance on the record, even over the Sons of the Silent Age. Interesting thing about the vocals that I read about in the Complete Bowie book is that Bowie's vocals were performed through an electronic filter that isolates the consonants of the song, while a synthesizer is providing the vocal sounds for the vowels.
Weird, interesting.
This is like Tony Visconti is like a sound guru.
He's a mad scientist,
He really is. I couldn't believe that when I read that. I just thought that was really neat. You mentioned again Florian Schneider. I mean this song was another one I wasn't always crazy about, but has really grown on me over the years. And I think part of the reason why I haven't always been crazy about this song is because I've always debated, is this part of the ambient suite? Because I don't think it is.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
It's sort of the transition. It's sort of the transition between the pop. I don't want to say pop, but the vocal tracks and the ambient stuff.
It's the new career in a new town of this record, because that track was an instrumental, but it wasn't part of the low ambient suite. But it, like you said, it served as a transition. It was like a palate cleanser and a transition, really. And I think that's to a degree what this track serves. But I dig it, man. I love this song. This song has so much from a technical aspect going on that Bowie didn't even perform it live until another 20 years. He didn't play this song till the Earthling tour, which, knowing what's to come on that record, I'd be really interested to hear what a live version of this song sounds like on the Earthling tour, but we've got a ways to go for that. But what are your thoughts on this song?
I thought this was a really cool track. I thought
this is a favorite for you.
This is where we're gonna again start talking about krautrock.
Yep.
Because for those who don't know, if you haven't watched the other episodes, I love krautrock, and so this Berlin period has always been very interesting to me with Bowie, because I know it's directly it's the big influence on the whole period. I mean, he went to Germany and everything, and just to be able to kind of capture some of what those great German bands were doing at the time. And I really like this one. I would say that for me, in terms of instrumentals, it's the weakest, but I don't even want to use the word weak, because it's not a weak track. It's very good. I think particularly this track, and I think it's appropriate to call it V2 Schneider, because it seems like a direct homage to that band, to Kraftwerk. It even just has that kind of Kraftwerk-y sound, very electronic, like a lot of those electronic soundscapes. I love the bass line. That stood out to me, in the whole rhythm of the track. I actually thought with the sax again, I wasn't thrilled with it. I thought it was fine, but I could have personally done without it.
Really?
Sorry, David. I know you're the one playing the sax. Love you, but the sax was fine. Like it was, but I would have been fine without it too. I was kind of neutral to it, I'd say. But yeah, overall it was cool. Like you kind of said. You said it best. It's the new career in a new town of this record, because I think it sort of is kind of part of the ambient stuff without being the ambient stuff. So overall very good.
Nice. So then that brings us to now the ambient tracks, the next 3 tracks. And again, we talked about on the Low episode that side 2 of Low, those songs, like they're meant to really be listened together.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, in comparison to these next 3 tracks, I can't listen to these 3 songs on their own. Like these 3 songs are meant to be listened to together.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Whereas I really do think, kind of looking back, on the and I overall, I'll just say already, I still prefer side 2 of Low.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think compared to these 3 songs, those songs do have an individual identity, and they can stand out on their own. Whereas you have to listen to these next 3 songs together. But my God, these next 10 minutes, or however much this adds up, is some of the most beautiful music you'll ever listen to. This is the point of the record where I try not to multitask when I'm listening to my music, but when I listen to this record, once I hear the beginning of Sense of Doubt and those 4 piano notes, I make sure I am just focused on that. I need to be focused on this part of the record and nothing else. Again, very doomy in the beginning, minimalistic instrumentation, all concentrated on just those 4 notes. Bowie had an interesting quote when talking about this song. He described it as retaining a human quality. If it became too electronic, it misses the point. My wish was to encapsulate what I see around me, the environment and the time. And we talked about that on the Low episode too, that each of those ambient tracks where he was hearing, whether during his time in Switzerland or in France or in Berlin, those songs were the sounds of what he was hearing on the streets of those cities. So I thought that, especially thinking about the sound of this record and Low, and with all the electronic experimentation, that he made a point to point out. And I agree that at its core, there still is and has to be a human quality to this song.
Yeah, this, spoiler alert, is like probably the best track on the record.
Okay.
I thought this tune was excellent. It was so good. I just wrote very dark and atmospheric. That whole ominous kind of like the dun 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 dun, very just ominous and weird. It was cool. It reminds me of Tangerine Dream a bit, some of the stuff that they do. It gave me that sort of, those electronic soundscapes. It gave me that feel to it, and I agree that it's got, it is, minimalist is a good way to say it, because it's not super complex. It's all atmosphere, and
no, it really isn't.
It's a big transition from this to the stuff that has previously been going on in the record, but it's a very, very nice transition, because I really, really like this tune. And I've always been a fan of like just dark music anyway, so this is like some of the darkest stuff I've heard, and I really loved it. I don't know what else to say. It was awesome.
Okay. I knew you would like this song along with, I'm gonna imagine, the next few tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to hear you say that this might be you might think that this is the best song. Because
I'm in the same boat with you. Whereas I kind of don't even know how to classify it because, and we'll talk about this when we get to our top three. But
yeah,
I agree that these three songs they're meant to be listened to together. So I'm hard pressed to piece them as one or analyze them separately. It's difficult. But if I had to choose between the instrumental ambient tracks, this one might be my favorite.
Okay, interesting.
It's very close.
Yeah. And so it sounds like we're both in agreement with that. That these are harder to separate.
Yeah, they're very hard.
The low ambient tracks.
Yeah.
So of course the next one, the second ambient piece would be Moss Garden, and Moss Garden very much continues that minimalist approach to Sense of Doubt, but it has more of a Japanese influence.
It changed the tone. It's quite a tonal change, but it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
It works beautifully.
Yeah.
And the Japanese influence I thought was interesting because I think that even brings, almost like Ziggy Stardust full circle a little bit, because
with a tinge of Noi thrown in there, because it reminds me of some of the stuff on Noi 75 particularly. It reminded me, which I'm not surprised.
No, I mean, again, and I didn't even think of the Tangerine Dream reference, by the way, that you made. So something I wanted to talk about that was used a lot on this record was Eno had talked about with this track specifically that they used this technique that I guess he came up with, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't read too much into it, and I should have, but he refers to it as oblique strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And what this is they're cards. They're like 7 centimeter by 9 centimeter. I forget what the dimensions were, but that's irrelevant. And this was a studio technique that he would use with his collaborators in the studio, and I think he started this with Bowie. So, and think of this song when I say this. So Bowie drew a card with instructions that said, destroy everything, while the card that Eno drew said, change nothing and continue with immaculate consistency. So what they drew had to be their mindset with how they approached this song, and a few of the other tracks off this record too. And neither of them knew what the other drew until they were done recording the track.
Weird. That's
really weird.
Yeah,
it doesn't get any more trippy than that.
Yeah, it's
but that right there to me just summarizes this song.
Oh, it's excellent. I just wrote that it's a nice, light, dreamy track, like the electronic textures and soundscapes. Really, it's really a beautiful song. It's probably the most beautiful song.
I think that's spot on.
Of these.
Definitely. I have unabashed beauty in my notes.
Yeah, and then I just said it's a. I kind of mentioned this before. It transitioned really well from the darker track. You've used this term a lot, a palette cleanser kind of thing. The dark track kind of takes you into that moody sort of like minimalist like darkness, and then this kind of raises you back up.
Yes.
And then you go to, what is it, Neukölln?
This was one I did look up the pronunciation. It's Neukölln.
Oh, okay. Close. Close.
And this is similar to Warsaw in the sense where actually the track listing doesn't have the correct spelling. There should be, I guess this is the American spelling. I might be wrong on that, but there actually should be a second L there. This song is a trip as well. This is almost like alien sounding. This is like Ziggy Stardust dropped acid, and this was like the sounds that he was hearing. NME journalist Roy Carr and Charles Shar Murray describe Neukölln as a mood piece. Well, duh. But specifically about the sounds of the Cold War being viewed through a bubble of blood. Or one of my favorite movies, or Harry Lime's last thoughts as he dies in the sewer in The Third Man, which I don't know if you've seen The Third Man.
No.
Otherwise, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But specifically with that movie, the final section features, or the song, I'm sorry. The final section features Bowie's plaintive saxophone booming out across a harbor of solitude as if lost in fog. And that's the correlation with the third man specifically.
That's a pretty cool description of the track.
Yeah, right?
Well done. Yeah, this was I would say for me, if we're talking about the pieces separately, I'd say the only negative thing I could say about this track is that it's not quite as good as Sense of Doubt in terms of like the darker tracks, but like it's an amazing track. I can't say anything. And yeah, I've said that I wasn't a big fan of the sax, how it was used in some of the other tracks. It's used very well here. I really
like it in this song.
Yeah, I really like it in this. It adds to the whole, like, it's almost like a desperate sort of just, I don't know, darkness that I just really love. Yeah, it just got that atmosphere thing. I also thought it gave me, again, referencing all my favorite krautrock bands, this one gave me a Can vibe. So
okay, yeah, I can see that.
Gave me a little bit of a Can vibe, but this was good. It was kind of cool to go kind of sort of back, but like in a different way, kind of back into that after that, like the lightness of Moss Garden.
Yeah,
it was kind of cool to go back into that dark pit again, you know.
Absolutely.
I'm a tortured soul.
I know you love your darkness.
I'm a tortured, sick soul. I love
You're
my dark stuff. You're a tortured,
sick soul.
But no, this song,
right.
and rounding up these, particularly these three tracks, V2 Snyder was okay, but these three tracks are the absolute high spot in this record for sure for me. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that at all. So I'm
not surprised to hear that at all. I actually thought you would have, because of the krautrock connection, I actually really thought you would have liked V2 Schneider more than
I like that. I like that one, but these three have that atmosphere. They have that.
But that doesn't surprise me at this.
Yeah, they have that atmosphere, that vibe, that sort of like you're going to a different place when you're listening to these, like to these three. It's great.
So interesting thing with our closing track.
Yeah.
A lot of what I've read online, just reviews of this record, and I think this is totally valid. I think a lot of people have issues with this track because of, especially coming out of these last three tracks, how it just totally takes you out of place. Whereas with Subterraneans or Blow, that song definitely felt right coming off of those three prior ambient pieces. So while I can understand that frustration, and that weird juxtaposition a little bit, this actually is my favorite song off the record. And that's The Secret Life of Arabia.
I really like this track too.
Do you? Okay.
I thought this song had a I wouldn't say it's my favorite by any means, the previous three, if we're gonna group them together, I would say, but it combines and now I was gonna say like the problem really is more the sequencing rather than the song itself, but now actually, literally this moment, I'm thinking about it. It kind of combines what the more ambient pieces are doing with the more lyrical and more, I don't want to use the word pop, but more accessible songs are doing into that track. So in a sense, it actually kind of makes sense thinking of it, but it is a bit jarring. The transition is a bit jarring, I would say, for sure.
It's very jarring, and it's why, you know, I wanted to make it a point to point out that I can understand that being an issue for people, and I was starting to think that was going to be the path you were going to go down, especially, you know, kind of going off of your love with these you know, three prior tracks.
Surprised you. I actually really love this song, actually. I
love this song. Yeah. I actually think this is I think it's the most overlooked song on the record.
I really
did. And I think that's a little ironic, because I would even make the argument that it's the most conventional song, in my opinion, out of the whole Berlin trilogy. Even over Heroes.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's hard for me to like agree just because Heroes is so. It's just so iconic and played so often. But I
It's
kind
so
of see where you're
iconic,
coming
but
from. Yeah, it's pretty accessible.
if
Yeah.
you dial it back and you and I have no way of confirming this because I haven't seen him say otherwise, but I have to imagine that if you go back in time to 1977 when Bowie, Ito, Visconti were recording this record, I don't think he ever thought in the slightest that Heroes was going to be a single.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was trying to promote this record more compared to Low. But I don't think when he wrote, because Heroes was the last song written as far as the lyrics go. I don't think he had any idea, let alone an intent for that song to be what it is today, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So if you think about it in that context, I think that kind of, you know, makes the argument more that I'm trying to make, that I really do think that this last track is the most accessible song. And Heroes is an accessible song, but I think compared to this song, which kind of makes it ironic that this is my favorite song, because I love this era of Bowie. I've said that countless times. It's weird. So why is this song my favorite?
It's kind of got all of it.
I think it that's exactly, and that's what I have in
Yeah.
my note. It's got like this complex multi-track vocals that you hear throughout the record. You're getting that bass from him. You're getting that falsetto. You're getting the spoken word.
I like his delivery, even just like
I
the
love
way.
his delivery as
Yeah.
well, his vocal delivery, whether it's the high or the low.
Hmm.
And shout out, because I haven't given him a shout out at all, but shout out to Carl Zalamar. And part of the reason why he hasn't gotten a shout out because freaking Robert Fripp is on this record, but Carlos Alomar, I don't think Fripp even plays on this track, but Carlos Alomar is like the standout in this song.
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, he does. He does the acoustic guitar part, right? Um, I literally wrote this. It's a really great song with a great hook. Love the instrumentation. Kind of strange electronic textures mixed with great acoustic guitar playing. In terms of sequencing, though, very odd placement. That's what I wrote. But it actually kind of makes sense. It in a sense makes sense to me. I actually could see the logic in it. Yeah.
It does, and that's where you can separate it from Low. We make all these comparisons with Low and Heroes, but that's where you can make that separation. Like Subterraneans was a logical closer for that record, and I like that he went, he had us fooled to the very end, like, oh, thought that this record was going to be the Low sequel. Well, no, and then he throws The Secret Life of Arabia at you. But I also kind of look at it as bringing those two records, and I know this is a trilogy, and we're going to talk about that more on the Lodger episode, and that was more of a marketing ploy, but stay tuned for Lodger. I do think that this song kind of closes both of these records. You start out, I mean, yeah, The Speed of Life, sounds very uppity up and and whatever, optimistic, full of energy, but really quick, you get right to those next few tracks. You're like, oh boy, what is going on here? And that darkness continues throughout Heroes. Yeah, there's a little bit more optimism, but then you get to this, and you're like, you know what, Bowie, you're gonna be okay, buddy. You really are.
Yeah, I agree. I think that being said, I would still change the sequencing.
Okay.
Because it is a little jarring. But yeah, I pretty much agree with what you said there. I mean,
yeah,
I really, really enjoyed the track, and I enjoyed it right away. I didn't really have a problem. I was like, oh, this is the last track. I assumed, like, I again thought that, I thought it was like, oh, is something playing off of a different album? Because like the first time I listened to it, in a long time, I was like, something playing off a different album, because I was in the middle of this vibe with these electronic tracks, and then this song came up, and I'm like, nope, still the record. So I was like, well, this is a good song, but it is, to me, it is a little jarring. I think it should. I think I would resequence the record a little bit, personally, not just this track, maybe a couple others, but overall, I mean, I really can't say there's super. There's weaker tracks, but there's no weak track. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I was just thinking too. I just don't know where else you would put this because while I agree, and that's why I started out with my explanation pointing that out because I can really. This is one where I could see the other side of the argument why one would feel the way they would with this track closing the record, but this is clearly also a closing track. It feels like a closing track. You know, all this doesn't feel right coming off of the ambient pieces aside.
Yeah.
This is a closer. So I don't know where else you would put this on the record.
Maybe it's good
It's
to
almost
jar
like you'd have
people's
to replace
senses. Maybe it's good to jar people's senses once in a while.
I think he was on with something.
What a plushie. My God, this cat. Anyway, sorry.
But,
so that's pretty much the record, right?
That's the record. That's Heroes. There weren't really, other than Heroes and V2 Schneider, there weren't any other singles that were released, at least at the time of when the album came out. On the 1991 Rico disc edition, there were 2 bonus tracks. One was a remix of Joe the Lion, and it's basically the equivalent of the remix to Sound and Vision. Why was this necessary to put out in the first place?
Yeah.
It takes all of the elements away from the original, the Fripp's distorted guitar. It's just so flat sounding and compare, which is weird because it's a remix. It's like they took less away. So I don't know what the purpose was, but it's not worth checking out. Stick with the original. If you keep up with some of the more recent box sets, I've name dropped them a few times before. The New Career to New Town box set, which covers From Low to Scary Monsters, does have an extended version of Beauty and the Beast. And while it doesn't add anything, it adds, I think, another like 50 seconds. While it doesn't add too much to the song, it's cool. It's worth checking out. But I wouldn't say it's like the superior version over the album version. There is another track that is kind of worth talking about, and this was the one I told you to check out, Rob. I've been trying to figure out pronunciation, and I still couldn't tell you. So I'll give it a whirl here. Abdulmajid.
I'm not even gonna bother. Yeah, it's a.
I can tell you where the name comes from. So this song wasn't given a name until like 15 years later. I believe it comes from the last name of his second wife, Amen.
Oh, okay.
I might be saying her first name wrong too. I'm not sure, but we're professionals here. So this song was an unreleased track from the Hero session. And the reason why it has the name that it has, because when he did re-release it for the Sound and Vision box set in 1991, he released it in her honor. All right. Having said that, it's a cool instrumental. It doesn't fit on the record. So this is one of those instances where it was an unreleased track for a reason. They did a lot of recording during this period that maybe we'll see for like a 50th anniversary release. But you know, it was cool. I like it. Again, it doesn't fit on the record, but what did you think of it?
You pretty much summed up my thoughts. I listened to it twice. I know that's not a lot. But yeah, it didn't like really blow me away like the other instrumental tracks did on this record, and I agree that it just didn't fit. Nice little kind of hidden gem though. You know, it was still decent. Kind of. Yeah.
We made a lot of Noise 75 references, and maybe in some ways the most Noise 75 sounding, but still just doesn't.
Still, go listen to that record, Noise 75, everybody, right now.
Noise 75. Really, the first 3 Noise records, you can't go
in fact, why are you still watching this, and why haven't you, in this time, you probably could have listened to Noise 75, so go do it.
Yeah, all right, so that's a wrap, guys. Oh, you know, really quick, because you had mentioned, and I meant to mention this earlier, you mentioned Gentle.
Yes.
Earlier, when I was telling you about that Visconti interview that I was watching.
Yeah. He produced them.
I didn't know he produced Gentle Giant, so he actually goes in depth about some of those records as well too.
Oh,
in
nice.
addition to some of the Bowie records I mentioned. So you especially need to check that out.
Yeah, I'll have to because I love Bowie. I love Gentle Giant. So yeah.
Let's do top 3 and then final thoughts.
So, top 3, if I may start. I'm gonna give you 2 lists, and I'll explain why. Okay. So, if you want just 3 tracks without any of the baggage, I'm gonna give you Sense of Doubt. I'm gonna give you Moss Garden, and I'm gonna give you Heroes. Okay. Why I picked those 3? The first 2 are my favorite instrumentals, and I feel like I'm obligated to pick Heroes because it is objectively so good and I love the song. So it was that. Now, caveat. I'm going to give you the second list. The second list, I would exclude Heroes because of the fact that it's just so iconic, you know. It's the song I knew really well, whereas to me the record was sort of a new experience aside from that song. So I kind of want to exclude it. So let's not include that. And this is also going to include the 3 pieces as a whole, the 3 instrumental pieces that I took out: Sense of Doubt, Moss Garden, and Neuklin, or however you pronounce it. Those 3 tracks.
Neuklin, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd put those 3 as number 1. Number 2, I would put Secret Life of Arabia.
Nice.
And number 3, I would put Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to give you 2 different answers there, but for me, it's like I totally agree with the statement you made about those 3, especially those 3 instrumentals. Maybe you could make an argument for V2 Schneider. I don't think I would put it in there, but those 3 instrumentals really should just be listened to as one piece.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the way I decided to approach my top 3 is that I'm not going to include Heroes.
Yeah, I don't think we should, personally.
When we do our top 30, yeah, Heroes will be in my top 30 favorite David Bowie songs, because despite what I told you about my feelings with that song, I still love that song, and it's in my top 30. I don't feel obligated to include it because if you are, my feelings are that song is so significant. If you are in the age bracket of minimum 25, so if you are between the ages 25 and I'll just go ahead and say 70, that song is in your DNA, whether you realize it or not. That's how much of a cultural significance that song has globally. Whether it's your fucking anthem, you know the true meaning of this. It's just one of those songs where it is in your DNA. You know it, heard it, whether you've realized it or not. And it's a great song.
I think we mentioned it.
Your intro. Oh, that's David Bowie. Let that be your introduction.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I'm not going to include it in my top 3 because there are other amazing songs that need to be given their due. In addition to Heroes.
That being said, if you're doing that sort of caveat, if you want to put those three instrumental tracks together as one, I'm fine with it, because I would rather do that personally.
Well, so if that's the case, then that would probably, because then Heroes would be my number 4, and then those would be my number 5 if I were to put them together.
Oh, wow.
Which means my top 3 would be The Secret Life of Arabia. My number 2 would be Joe the Lion, and my number 3 would be I'm sorry, Secret Life of Arabia. My number 2 would be the Sun's Silent Age, and my number 3 would be Blackout.
Wow, so we have quite a different list there. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
this is probably the biggest difference in opinion I think we've had on the Bowie record. So I like this. Yeah. I like this, but we both obviously really like the record. I mean. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good segue to our final thoughts. It's crazy to think that 10 years ago, he put out that first David Bowie record. Mm-hmm. And just looking back, this is album number 12. First of all, 12 records in 10 years.
That's a lot, yeah.
That's an achievement for anybody, whether those records are good or bad.
Are you even talking? Are you including live albums there?
I'm not including live albums.
So yeah, you're talking probably more like 15, close to 15, right?
No, it's 12 on the dot. So if you go by the official studio canon, if you will, he has 25. Pinups is included in that, but the Boot of Siberia is, in which I can't wrap my head around. So from David Bowie and including Pinups all the way to Heroes, that's 12 records.
But that includes the live albums too, or no?
That does not include the
so
live
including
albums,
the live albums up to this point, he'd actually, if you count the live albums, you're talking more like 15 records probably, right?
Roughly.
You had like David Live, you had the Ziggy Stardust soundtrack, right? And then
Stage.
Yeah, so yeah.
Which I guess we should talk about that really quick before final thoughts.
Yeah.
So the subsequent live record. So Bowie didn't promote Low. He didn't tour Low. He pretty much promoted Low in conjunction with Heroes, and that was the Isolar 2 tour. And the live record that he put out at the time was called Stage. While not as bad as David Live, it does fall into that category of what were you thinking with this? It's not a live record in the truest sense, where they did so many studio overdubs before officially releasing it. And the other thing that they did too was they tried to sequence it like an album. So Bowie played a lot of Ziggy Stardust songs during that tour, and I don't know if it's because it was like the 5-year anniversary. I'm not sure. So there's like a lot of Ziggy songs, along with your Station to Stations, your Rebel Rebel, etc. But when they released Stage back in '78, they tried to sequence it like a record, where as opposed to just releasing the record in the order the set list was.
Right.
So it's really weird. Fast forward to 100 gazillion re-releases of the Stage record. It's been set to its original, set list run, right? I don't know. It's like David Live, where that performance was more towards the beginning of the tour. If you want to hear a live record from this era, I would recommend Welcome to the Blackout, which was a live record that only came out like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It is the superior live record of this era in his career. And so it's similar to Cracked Actor in that sense. Cracked Actor was a show months later from the David Live show. He sounds better, more energized, and Welcome to the Blackout's the same. And I think it was actually the last show on the tour, now that I'm thinking about it. Again, just the band's more energized, he sounds better, and I don't know if that's just a thing with bands and artists when they tour. I guess logically it makes sense that you're gonna sound better the more you've been performing these songs. You're in that live routine. I'm not saying it's a live record that will blow your socks off, but of the two, it's the superior version.
He seems to have a trend of the official albums he releases. Live albums are kind of not very good, but then later on they release something else from that tour that's pretty good.
Yeah,
very good
I guess
in some cases.
With this one specifically, it was intended for a video release and it got scrapped.
Oh, okay.
So that all these years later, I just finally got it. Originally got a vinyl release, and it's on Spotify, CD, all that too. Again, it won't blow your socks off, but there are some really cool performances, specifically of 5 years, that stand out. Station to Station, there's a great live version. They play Sound and Vision for the first time at that show, which is funny because it's the last show of the tour, but that was good. A good version. I know you talked about in the Diamond Dogs episode not being able to find a good Rebel live version, and I told you to check out the reality version,
which I've
this has
heard
a pretty
before, yeah.
Which you liked, yeah. This has a pretty good version of Rebel actually, so that stood out too. Yeah, so those are the two live records. I'm not going to go in depth, but if you're going to check out a live album from the era, Welcome to the Blackout.
Nice.
Now, final thoughts.
Okay, I'm just gonna be boring, and because we've covered a lot of stuff, we've been going for a little while, so I'm just gonna read what I wrote here because I think it sums it up nicely. Very solid album. Definitely not as strong as Low overall, I would say. But I may like the instrumental pieces, I think, a bit more, the ambient pieces, some of them.
Okay.
The album is a bit oddly sequenced, but not to the point where it's detrimental to it, as I said. And in some ways I kind of actually, I wrote this before we did this, and now I kind of understand, particularly with that last track, why it's sequenced the way it is. The overall sound is definitely unique enough that it stands on its own despite the similarities to Low in structure and musical direction. So it's going in it's like Bowie already went in that musical direction, like we said, and he was kind of trying to fine-tune things. And I think overall Heroes, while in the same vein as Low, is its own thing. So I think that's awesome that he was able to make two very unique records in a row, and two very good records. And to me, there aren't any huge low points at all, and a number of very high points. And I would also just add that I did not read to that, is that, guys, I need more time with this record. I mean, I probably should have listened to it more during this long hiatus we've had. Been busy. I'd like to see where I'm at with this record when all is said and done and we finally wrap up this series sometime in 2025 or whenever we fucking wrap this up. But yeah, I just, as I said earlier in the episode, I just need more time with it. I'll be curious to see how my favorite tracks change and how my thoughts change on it. But overall, I really, really liked it. I think I still like Low better, but this is only like a step behind. So
okay,
and potentially could even either A, meet it, or even B, surpass it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And I agree. I think you do need to spend more time with it.
Yeah.
So I would be
just
interested
being
to
honest
see
there.
when your feelings or if your feelings do change over time. I think again, you can make one argument that this record surpasses Low in many ways. It's like they took everything that they did with Low and refined it. At its core, with having a pop side, like a art pop side one, and an ambient abstract side two.
Yeah, they're structurally similar.
And I think they're structurally similar. And I think overall there's a strong case, even if we want to just look at both sides. There's a strong argument to be made that side one's pop side is more refined and stronger than Low's, and same thing with side two with the ambient pieces. But you can also make the argument that, again, it is its own thing, as we said with the way the record ends. Whether you find it jarring or it works for you with The Secret Life of Arabia. Having said all of that, history has leaned towards Low more, and I'm with history. For some reason, I just identify with Low. I personally like the ambient tracks on Low better still, but again, I think there's an argument to be made that the tracks off Heroes are better. Low, to me, and maybe because it's just the first, and not to contradict literally what I just said 60 seconds ago, Low just sounds more daring. And I think, again, because it's the first one. And that was the intent. He wasn't looking to do this big commercial release, hence the lack of promotion. Either way, these two records are so important in his career. I made the argument that I think Low might be the most important record. And the man has said himself that this is his best work. For me, I think Heroes is on the cusp of joining the 5-star club.
Along like a 4.5 star maybe for you?
Huh?
Maybe a 4.5 star for you?
It's already a 4.5. I think it's like 4.75, and I think it's getting ready to join the 5-star club.
Yeah.
Because I still love this record. And everything I love about it, for me, is how I'm able to separate it from Low. So like I acknowledge the similarity, but I really do think that both these records have their own individual identities. Having said that, I can't wait to talk about Lodger. And I almost want to say this on camera now, especially you saying several times that you need to spend more time with this record. Lodger's the third installment of this trilogy. It's on one hand, the poppiest record of the three, but I think it takes the longest to grow on you out of the three.
Oh, I might really need to put some time into Lodger.
If you need more time with Heroes, I would almost say to our listeners, to allow Rob time, it might be a bit before we get to Lodger, because I think Lodger is such an underrated record, and I'm so happy that it's starting to get its due.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Bowie fans, diehard Bowie fans, are really like Lodger, like cheering for Lodger, and I'm one of them. It's another record I'm excited to talk about. Can't wait to hear your thoughts, but I do ask you to spend as much time on it as you can.
Okay, I'll have to really do my homework on that. I think maybe what we could even do, if I'm not ready, is try to record something in the interim, which we'll talk about off camera and stuff, but
off camera,
just to give me more time with it, because I think I've grasped, I think I listened to this album enough to have a good, like a pretty solid opinion on it, but I'm gonna need more time over time. But like, yeah, if you're saying that Lodger's gonna need even more time, I probably should listen to it more, like 10 times at least.
So, it's got a weird place in the canon, because although it's part of the trilogy, I'm gonna talk about that.
Yeah, and I know this and Low are very beloved, and then Scary Monsters, and then Let's Dance are after that, and they're also beloved. So it's kind of sandwiched in between quite a few big albums.
It's the Young Americans in that aspect, where it's another transition. Like, you're coming off of Low and Heroes, but it definitely is a person to I can't talk, to Scary Monsters. Difference being it's a bajillion times better than Young Americans. But it's got its own vibe that grows over time, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And the last thing I want to say was it was to your Low Heroes thing. I think I know what you're talking about there, where Low, there is something special about Low. It could be that it's really when he kind of just took the leap, and maybe that it being all new and it sounds fresh and it sounds daring might be what kind of puts it above Heroes. Although, like you said, ironically at the same time, Heroes, you could tell they were really fine-tuning things, and you had the inclusion of Fripp joining, and you just had a lot more time for them to polish the stuff. But sometimes, I mean, not that it's a detriment to the record at all, but sometimes, there's something about trying something new and the inexperience of something that brings something new to the table as well. So I don't know. There is a vibe with Low that it's hard to describe. But yeah, I agree. I'd put Low a little above it.
It's definitely no other record sounds like that. The closest being Heroes.
Yeah, but I would agree. That said, I think I'm good. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
No, I'm good. Guys, hope as long as the gap between Low and Heroes, but I'm just so happy to record with you again.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Super grateful that you were able to find some time to do this. So guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, please. If you're listening to us over in podcast land, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever your preferred way of listening to podcast is, we are on Twitter, I think that's it, actually, just Twitter.
And which, to be honest, I don't even know if I want to plug. I don't even use Twitter on my own channel, so sorry, I'm not a social media person. I've tried.
Yeah, that's gonna have to be another behind the scenes talk that we have, because I'm a grandpa when it comes to social, but
fair enough.
with a medium like this, there's
a need.
some benefits.
Yeah, there's definitely some benefits.
So,
is there last thing before we go for the listeners, people who might not be as familiar with this period? As a person who really, really enjoyed both in the last record and this record, all the ambient pieces, did you mention, or like, am I hallucinating here? Is there like a compilation of all the ambient stuff that he's done? I would very much like to hear that.
I talked about it on Low.
I thought you did.
It's called All Saints. You can find it on Spotify. It has all the ambient tracks from Low and Heroes. It has the bonus track that I told you to check out. It has All Saints. That was a bonus track from the Low sessions. Pretty much all his instrumentals. So stuff from like the Boot of Siberia, other soundtrack work he did. Yes, it's called All Saints, and you can find it on Spotify.
All Saints, check it out if you're like me and you really, really like the ambient stuff. Not that the other stuff isn't good, but the ambient stuff is so different that I think it's just a different side to his career, even, you know, because you always associate Bowie with this as a huge pop star. You don't think of him making these sort of weird, eccentric ambient pieces, and they're very good. They're excellent.
Well, we won't be coming across the ambient pieces for quite some time. So a lot of like the side one quirky art pop stuff will be on the next two records, but as far as the ambient pieces, we won't be seeing them till further down the line. So All Saints is probably a good one to check out if you're into that style.
Cool.
But that's it, guys. Again, we'll see you soon. Hit that like button. Can we get some comments in the comments section too? Give us your top three.
Yeah,
give us your top three favorite songs off the record, and tell us what your favorite Bowie record is from the debut to Heroes, because why not?
Yeah, exactly. Or give us a top 3 or 5 or something. Let us know what you think.
But we need to get some more involvement in the comments section. But we also have to get better in responding in the comments ourselves.
Fair enough.
It's both sides.
So.
And consistency. But
right,
that's it, guys. We'll see you next time. Check out Kuroda Kayastuki, by the way.
Thanks. That's my gaming channel. Check it out. Check it out.
And I said it right.
Check it out. Thank you.
All right.
You got it.
Guys.
Bye, everybody. Peace.
Peace.